We enter relationships with such optimism, with such faith in the power of love, that we often overlook one of its most fragile foundations: emotional safety. We assume that because we care, because we feel desire or passion, everything else will somehow follow. But this is a dangerous illusion. Love without safety is like a fragile bridge spanning a deep chasm. It may hold for a while, but the weight of misunderstanding, unspoken grievances, or small betrayals will eventually cause it to wobble and sometimes to collapse. Emotional safety is not glamorous. It doesn't announce itself with fireworks or dramatic declarations. It is subtle, quiet, and often invisible until it is gone. Emotional safety is the space that allows us to be vulnerable, to show our fears, our insecurities, even our anger, without fear of judgment or retaliation. It is what allows us to whisper a fear late at night, to admit mistakes without shame, to express desires without guilt. When this safety is absent, even the smallest discomforts can escalate into conflicts, because every word and gesture is filtered through suspicion or defensiveness. Partners may still love each other, but the love becomes brittle, unable to withstand the pressures of everyday life. Intimacy, which depends on trust and openness, slowly erodes. One of the most common mistakes we make is assuming that emotional safety is permanent. We assume that once trust is established, it will remain intact. We believe that because we have loved, we are automatically safe. But emotional safety is not a one-time achievement. It is an ongoing practice. It is cultivated in the daily interactions that may seem trivial: listening without interrupting, acknowledging feelings without dismissing them, showing up consistently rather than only when convenient. Every slight of impatience, every subtle critique, every avoided conversation chips away at this foundation. And over time, the accumulation of these small wounds creates a barrier between partners, a wall of silence, avoidance, or guardedness that even love struggles to penetrate. Communication plays a crucial role here, and not just in the obvious sense of talking about feelings. It is about how we respond to each other's emotions, how we create a climate where honesty feels safe, and where disagreements are opportunities for understanding rather than threats. Many couples confuse conflict avoidance with harmony, thinking that staying silent preserves love. In truth, avoiding difficult conversations is one of the surest ways to undermine it. When we avoid speaking our truths, we also avoid seeing our partners fully, and they, in turn, may feel unseen or dismissed. Over time, the absence of genuine dialogue erodes the trust that love depends on. There is also a philosophical dimension to emotional safety. Love is often imagined as a spontaneous, self-sustaining force, but the reality is more complex. Intimacy requires both courage and care. Courage because it demands vulnerability. Care because it requires attention to the other person's sense of security and belonging. Love alone cannot guarantee these qualities. A relationship can be passionate, exciting, even deeply affectionate, and yet collapse under the weight of fear, suspicion, or emotional neglect. The paradox is stark. The very act of loving someone, without conscious attention to safety, can unintentionally place the relationship in jeopardy. Consider how small acts, repeated over time, can silently erode safety. A sarcastic comment meant as a joke, a dismissive response to a partner's worry, or a failure to acknowledge their perspective may seem insignificant in the moment. But these small fractures accumulate, creating an environment where vulnerability feels risky, where honest expression is stifled, and where partners start to protect themselves emotionally rather than share openly. Eventually, love exists only in memory or in isolated moments of connection, unable to sustain the ongoing intimacy required for a thriving relationship. The practical implication is both simple and profound. Emotional safety must be nurtured continuously. It requires conscious attention to how we listen, how we respond, and how we engage with the inner world of the person we love. It is created in the daily decisions to honor feelings, to stay present even when it is uncomfortable, and to communicate in ways that build trust rather than diminish it. Love may spark the connection, but emotional safety allows that spark to become a lasting flame. So, the lesson is clear. Taking emotional safety for granted is one of the slowest yet most devastating ways to undermine love. Passion, desire, even deep affection cannot survive when fear, defensiveness, or neglect dominates the relational space. To preserve love, we must treat safety not as a given, but as a delicate, living practice, a commitment that is renewed moment by moment, conversation by conversation. Without it, love may endure in memory, but it cannot flourish in reality. And so, I leave you with this thought. Love invites connection, but emotional safety allows it to breathe, to grow, and to endure. Guard it, cultivate it, and honor it every day, because it is the invisible thread that holds the most profound bonds together. Even when emotional safety is present, even when love feels abundant, relationships falter when partners fail to confront one of the quietest, most insidious threats to intimacy: misaligned expectations. We enter relationships believing that love will naturally align our paths, that our shared affection will automatically harmonize our desires, values, and life goals. But love is not a magic solvent for the complexities of human ambition, desire, and personal vision. The failure to articulate and negotiate expectations is one of the slowest yet most certain ways to erode intimacy and breed resentment. Expectations are not inherently bad. They are the blueprints we carry for how life should unfold, how partnership should function, and how love should manifest. They shape our understanding of fairness, commitment, and fulfillment. The problem arises when these blueprints remain unspoken, assumed, or idealized. We may expect a partner to intuitively understand our needs, to naturally prioritize our shared goals, or to align with our vision of the future. And when reality diverges, disappointment and frustration creep in, often without either partner fully recognizing the source. Consider the subtle ways this misalignment emerges. One partner may envision a life grounded in stability, routine, and security, while the other thrives on novelty, change, and exploration. One may prioritize career and personal achievement, the other family and relational depth. These differences are not trivial, they are existential. They shape the rhythm of daily life, the decisions we make, and the meaning we derive from our existence. When unaddressed, they create a slow, persistent friction, a tension that love alone cannot erase. Passion may temporarily mask the discrepancy, but over time, it reveals itself in irritations, disagreements, and the quiet erosion of satisfaction. The danger of misaligned expectations is compounded by our tendency to avoid confrontation. We fear conflict, worry about rejection, or hope that our partner will eventually see things our way. We may tell ourselves, love is enough, or we'll work it out naturally, convincing ourselves that patience alone will bridge the gap. Yet this very avoidance is what allows resentment to take root. Differences, left unexplored, do not disappear. They accumulate, often beneath the surface, until they surface as bitterness, detachment, or silent disconnection. The relationship may feel off without any dramatic event to pinpoint, leaving both partners puzzled and frustrated. Philosophically, this highlights a profound truth about love. It is not simply an emotion, it is a relational practice. Love invites us to care, to desire, and to bond, but it does not guarantee alignment. Intimacy requires conscious negotiation, the courage to articulate what we truly need, and the willingness to hear our partner's vision without judgment. It demands that we hold two truths simultaneously, that our partner is deeply lovable, and that their path may differ from ours. Ignoring this reality creates a slow-burning dissonance, a mismatch that love cannot smooth over without active engagement. Misaligned expectations also touch on the tension between individual growth and relational harmony. Each partner enters a relationship as a complex, evolving individual. Over time, ambitions shift, desires evolve, and priorities change. The failure to regularly communicate and recalibrate expectations is a recipe for disappointment. What was once compatible may gradually diverge, and the very love that initially connected the partners can become insufficient to navigate the new realities. The challenge is not to suppress individual growth, but to integrate it consciously into the shared life of the partnership. Practical experience shows that couples who navigate expectations successfully do so through deliberate conversation. They ask not only, "What do you want now?" but also, "Where do you hope to be in 5, 10, or 20 years?" They explore lifestyle preferences, career ambitions, family priorities, and even personal rhythms of emotional connection. They recognize that love is a dynamic contract, one that must be revisited, renegotiated, and refined over time. They understand that alignment is not guaranteed. It must be consciously cultivated. The lesson is clear. Ignoring misaligned expectations is a silent, creeping destroyer of love. It does not erupt in dramatic confrontation, but it slowly erodes the foundation of the relationship, leaving both partners feeling frustrated, misunderstood, or unfulfilled. Love may continue to exist in these situations, but it becomes insufficient. It cannot compensate for the friction between what we expect and what we actually experience. So, the challenge is both simple and profound: to be intentional about alignment, to speak openly about our hopes, priorities, and boundaries, to listen with curiosity rather than judgment, to acknowledge that differences do not signal failure, but rather an invitation for negotiation, understanding, and growth. Love alone is not enough. It requires the scaffolding of mutual clarity and shared vision. When we commit to this work, relationships not only survive, but they thrive. When we ignore it, even the deepest affection can slowly unravel, leaving behind longing, regret, and the haunting question of what might have been. And so, I leave you with this thought: love opens the door, but conscious alignment of expectations allows it to flourish. To love well, we must see clearly, speak honestly, and negotiate with courage. Only then can the heart and life move forward together, rather than quietly drift apart. Even when love is strong, even when emotional safety exists and expectations are aligned, relationships can still falter if boundaries and trust are neglected. Boundaries are often underestimated because they seem so mundane, so ordinary, yet they are the invisible architecture of intimacy. They define what is acceptable, what is safe, and what is sacred within a partnership. Without them, even the deepest affection can be compromised. Trust, closely intertwined with boundaries, is the glue that holds connection together. When either is neglected, love does not vanish in an instant. It erodes quietly, day by day, until the foundation itself begins to crack. Boundaries are not walls, they are the edges of care. They are the agreements, spoken or unspoken, that guide how we treat each other, how we communicate, and how we engage with the world beyond the relationship. They mark the line between support and enmeshment, between intimacy and intrusion. When boundaries are neglected, relationships suffer in subtle but profound ways. A partner who consistently disregards another's emotional or physical space may not intend harm, but the cumulative effect is often a sense of invisibility, resentment, or disconnection. Love cannot thrive when either partner feels that their limits are dismissed or disrespected. Trust is equally fragile. It is not merely the absence of betrayal. It is a living, dynamic process, continuously reinforced through actions, transparency, and consistency. Trust allows vulnerability, the courage to expose our imperfections, our fears, and our desires, knowing that we will not be punished or abandoned for them. When trust is compromised through secrecy, dishonesty, or repeated boundary violations, intimacy begins to erode. Partners may still love each other, but that love is filtered through suspicion, doubt, and caution. Every interaction becomes tinged with uncertainty, and over time, the relationship loses the lightness and spontaneity that once defined it. One of the most insidious mistakes couples make is assuming that small breaches of trust or boundary violations are harmless. A seemingly minor act, a lie about finances, a withheld truth, a broken promise, can appear trivial in isolation. Yet over time, these small cracks accumulate, undermining the sense of safety that is essential for closeness. The problem is compounded by denial. We often convince ourselves that because the breach was minor, or because love is strong, the relationship will survive. But trust is not cumulative, it is delicate. The repeated ignoring of boundaries, however subtle, sends a message that the relationship's foundation is negotiable, and in the long run, nothing erodes love faster than that quiet erosion of certainty and respect. There is a psychological dimension to this as well. Humans are wired to notice when promises are broken, when implicit agreements are violated, when the other's actions do not match their words. Our emotional brains are finely attuned to these signals, even if we consciously choose to overlook them. When boundaries and trust are neglected, the subconscious mind stores these experiences as evidence that the relationship may not be safe. Over time, even the most rational partner begins to withdraw, to limit vulnerability, and to protect themselves emotionally. This is why infidelity, chronic dishonesty, or repeated boundary violations are so devastating, not merely because of the act itself, but because they corrode the trust that makes intimacy possible. Philosophically, the neglect of boundaries and trust exposes a paradox in love. The desire to be close can, if untempered by discipline, actually drive partners apart. Love encourages intimacy, connection, and vulnerability, but without clear boundaries, these very acts of closeness can be experienced as threat or intrusion. The conscious maintenance of trust and respect is not a restriction on love. It is what allows love to breathe. When we honor boundaries and act in ways that consistently reinforce trust, we create a relational environment where both partners feel free to be themselves while remaining fully committed to each other. When we fail to do so, love may persist in memory or desire, but it cannot thrive in reality. This is why couples who sustain long-term intimacy do so through deliberate, consistent attention to boundaries and trust. They check in about limits, revisit agreements, and respond to each other's concerns with curiosity rather than defensiveness. They understand that the relationship is a living system, and that its health depends not only on affection and passion, but also on the ethical and emotional integrity of their interactions. Neglecting boundaries is not a dramatic failure. It is a slow, almost invisible erosion that eventually undermines the connection itself. So, the lesson is clear. Love alone cannot compensate for neglected boundaries or broken trust. Affection, desire, or passion cannot substitute for the sense of safety, respect, and reliability that these structures provide. Relationships require vigilance and intentionality, the courage to define limits, the commitment to honor them, and the humility to repair breaches when they occur. Without these practices, love, no matter how intense, is always at risk of slowly fading under the weight of unmet expectations, unspoken rules, and violated trust. And so, I leave you with this thought. Love is the invitation, but boundaries and trust are the architecture. Protect them, nurture them, and honor them daily, because it is within this framework that love does not merely survive, but flourishes. Even when emotional safety is present, expectations are aligned, and trust is honored, love can still falter if the individuals within the relationship resist personal growth and self-awareness. It is one of the slowest, most insidious ways that love erodes. Relationships are living systems, and they reflect not only the bond between two people, but also the interior landscapes of those who share it. If one or both partners remain static, resisting reflection, avoiding accountability, or refusing to confront patterns of thought and behavior, the relationship gradually stagnates. Love, no matter how strong, cannot thrive in a stagnant ecosystem. Personal growth is not about self-improvement in the superficial sense, or about becoming more desirable to our partner. It is about deepening our understanding of ourselves, our needs, our fears, our triggers, and our patterns of response. Self-awareness allows us to notice when we are contributing to conflict, when we are projecting past wounds onto the present, or when we are unconsciously expecting our partner to meet needs that we have not yet addressed ourselves. When growth is resisted, these dynamics remain hidden, quietly undermining connection. Partners may love each other passionately, but their love is filtered through the weight of unresolved internal conflicts. Intimacy suffers not because of lack of feeling, but because of unexamined behaviors and unacknowledged patterns. One of the most common manifestations of this resistance is a tendency to blame the other person for relational difficulties. We may look at our partner and think, if only they were more attentive, more understanding, more present, the relationship would work. Yet often, these complaints are reflections of our own unmet needs, unexamined fears, or avoidance of personal responsibility. Growth requires humility, the courage to look inward, to recognize our own contribution to tension, and to act deliberately to evolve. Without it, love becomes a mirror of frustration rather than a vehicle for shared flourishing. Psychologically, resisting growth also limits our capacity for empathy. A partner who refuses to examine themselves may struggle to truly see the other, to understand their emotional world, or to adjust behaviors in response to their needs. Empathy is not innate. It is cultivated through self-reflection and emotional literacy. When it is absent, even the most affectionate gestures can be misinterpreted, missed, or undervalued. Small misunderstandings accumulate, subtle resentments grow, and eventually the relationship feels constricted and suffocating, despite the presence of love. There is also a philosophical dimension to this dynamic. Love is not only about connection, it is a force that challenges us to become more fully human. Relationships confront us with our contradictions, our vulnerabilities, and our limitations. They hold up a mirror, reflecting aspects of ourselves that we might otherwise ignore. To resist growth in this context is to refuse the very invitation that love extends. It is to choose comfort over transformation, familiarity over curiosity, and inertia over the challenging work of evolution. The paradox is profound. The same love that brings joy and intimacy also presents the clearest path to self-discovery, and ignoring that path slowly dims the vitality of the relationship itself. Growth is also relational, not only individual. A partner's discomfort, critique, or unmet expectation often serves as a catalyst for introspection. These moments are opportunities to confront blind spots and expand our capacity for patience, compassion, and understanding. Those who resist this reflection miss not only the chance to deepen their relationship, but also the chance to deepen themselves. The relationship becomes a static container, preserving love in form, but not in vitality, passion, or depth. Practically, sustaining love requires a commitment to conscious evolution. This means regularly reflecting on our behaviors and motivations, being willing to confront discomfort, and seeking understanding rather than defense. It means embracing the idea that intimacy is not a natural state, but a practice, one that grows richer when each partner is committed to self-awareness and growth. Relationships do not thrive by default. They thrive when each individual is willing to engage actively with both their own interior life and the shared life they co-create. The lesson here is both sobering and empowering. Love alone cannot sustain a relationship if personal growth and self-awareness are neglected. Passion, desire, and affection may keep two people connected temporarily, but without conscious evolution, love eventually becomes insufficient. The partner who resists growth is like a tree that stops rooting. No matter how fertile the soil, it will begin to wither. The same is true for relationships. Even the most intense connection falters if the individuals within it stop growing. So, the challenge and the opportunity is clear. To love fully, we must also be willing to examine ourselves. We must embrace the mirror that relationships hold up to us, confront our own limitations, and cultivate the courage to evolve alongside our partner. Love is the invitation, but growth is what allows it to flourish, deepen, and endure. Without it, even the strongest bond slowly erodes. With it, love becomes not only enduring, but transformative, capable of revealing the best of who we are and the potential of who we might become.